Welcome back, everyone. Before we get started, please remember to hit the like, share, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you listen. This will make sure we can keep bringing you the amazing guests and great content you have come to expect. Now, let's get to the show. This week's guest was dragged onto the wrestling mats by his father, and early in his career, he cried after almost every practice. But even as an 8th grader, he had a voice telling him that even though he was constantly being beat up, it wasn't always going to be that way. It was that attitude that led Brandon Mullins to become not only a high-level jiu-jitsu competitor, but a multi-time world champion. Listen as Brandon discusses how he overcame his rough start in combat sports, his thoughts on how everyone from hobbyists to competitors can optimize their training, and how sometimes being selfish on the mats is a necessity. Here is the Roll Radio with IBJJF European Open champion, no-gi pan champion, and multi-time no-gi world champion, Brandon Mullins.
Welcome to Raw Radio.
Hey, we're live. Gary, how are you?
I'm good. I had some very interesting afternoon. I've been running around like crazy today, right? And
I heard a rumor.
There's a rumor.
I heard a rumor.
There's a lot of rumors about me. Most of them are true, unfortunately. But I think, what rumor are you talking about?
I heard that you have a new addition to your family.
I do. We went and got a puppy today. 2-month-old. He looks like he's probably going to fill out to be about 70 pounds. He's a sheepdog terrier mix. He's scruffy. He's adorable. The kids are already in love. I think I'm probably already in love too. I'm a sucker for a dog. So we brought him home and then I left right away. I was like, all right, here's this puppy. I got to go. I got something to do. So, but we'll see. I think he's going to be named Tuco. Tuco. And if you don't know who that is, just Google Tuco. And, new addition. It's going to be fun and exciting. I haven't had a puppy in a long time. So it's going to be cool.
That's going to be interesting dynamic.
I think so.
Before we start this episode, let's quickly talk about Fuji.
Yes.
These guys have been hooking us up for a while. It seems like this is your part of the show. So what? Yeah,
that little bit you give me.
That little bit, the whole 30 seconds of fame.
Yes.
That you have.
Go to therollradio.com, take a 1-question survey, and you are automatically enrolled to win a Fuji gi. We give them away once a month. Listen for your name and then keep an eye on your email once you get the email from me. So look in your junk, your spam, everywhere else. That's where most of my emails go. You got 72 hours to respond. That's it. We move on after 72 hours. Everybody recently, we've given away 7 now. The last 5, everybody's claimed right away. So people are happy about it. It's a free gi and it's a free Fuji gi. They've got great stuff. So that being said, therollradio.com, take the survey. You're automatically entered to win a free gi. And who doesn't want free stuff? So
sweet.
Yes.
Brandon, welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
I told you to be casual.
I thought you forgot about me.
I told you Gary talks too much.
Oh man, hey.
So is Tuco from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
It absolutely 100%
Okay.
is from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Yeah, that is something that I have been involved in films for a long time. Did I just get kicked out of the meeting? No, I'm still here. All right, my screen's going crazy, but yeah,
your screen's frozen on my end.
Yeah. All right.
We lost Gary. Look at that.
Yes. I'm gone. Let me rejoin.
Anyhow, while this is happening, how are you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Just relaxing over here, winding down, ready to have some good conversation.
Yeah. So we heard that you are a great friend of Draculino, which we had him on the show. You guys had quite a bit of a history together, and when we talked to Draculino, he's like, listen, you got to talk to this guy. So this is kind of where this is surfacing, but I'm glad that you were able to join us today. And this is always the interesting question I always start. What's up, Gary?
I just want to see if you can let me in. I'm not going to get in.
You are in. Look.
All right. My computer's going crazy, so I'm just going to look at the monitor. It's going fine. Keep it going.
Are you ready now? Take 2. We are live. Never mind. It doesn't. You and Draculino go way back, and your journey, at least what I understand, is quite colorful, quite rich in jiu-jitsu, and you base some really interesting philosophies when it comes to technique and concepts and so on. So let's dig into from the beginning. How did it all start for you?
Well, I mean, in terms of jiu-jitsu, I started off in wrestling. Like, my dad forced me to wrestle, like seriously forced me. There was crying involved. I was like in 8th grade. And I mean, it was a big, like, it was a whole thing. And then, I eventually got in there and, pretty quickly I loved it. And long story short, I ended up finding out about jiu-jitsu through wrestling. We had an off-season wrestling coach that would teach us when the season was over. And one day he wheeled in a TV. This is like a long time ago when we still had VCRs.
What year is this?
Yeah.
What year? What year was this?
This was 93, I think.
Oh yeah.
1993.
So you're talking about there's not even flat screen. You're talking old school.
No. This is way old school. And so he showed us UFC. I think it was number 2 is what he showed us. And we were wrestling, and so school rules, you're not allowed to wrestle like after the season. It's against what they call UIL. And so, but since jiu-jitsu wasn't really wrestling, we were able to do it. So we were able to train while technically not training. And so that was like my first introduction to it. And, we didn't really know anything. So we just had, like the UFC, it's all we knew. So we would do no time limit, no weight class, no striking, but just like wrestling, trying to submit each other. And it was wild. It was pretty crazy. And
I like how you found a loophole in a system.
It was my coach.
This is not wrestling. This is not wrestling. We're not wrestling. We're not punching each other, but this is not wrestling for sure.
Hey, it's America. We innovate. We're innovators, And so, like I said,
so it's not just me. Internet connections.
Basically, and sometimes we wouldn't have a submission and somebody would get it or whatever, but that kind of planted the seed. And then I wasn't really able to train jiu-jitsu. We moved away from the city I was in, and then fast forward many or several years, and I end up in Lubbock, Texas. And I was going to school there at the time. I was 19, and Draculino came and he did a seminar there, and I had already heard about him through one of the guys that I had trained judo with, a guy named Paul Thomas. Mm-hmm. And he was actually, like the first gringo in Bella with Professor Draculino. And so he had been telling me about this guy for like a year. And then I moved away to Lubbock, and I'm like, man, what kind of jiu-jitsu is out here? Ended up being a lot of really great jiu-jitsu. And then all of a sudden, this guy Draculino that I had heard of shows up out of nowhere. And I'm like, man, I know this guy, And so as soon as he got there, I'm young and stupid or whatever. I walk up to him like I actually know him. And he's like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? And I kind of explain who. He's like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. But then when the seminar came around, me and him are pretty much the same size. And so he happened to pick me as his training partner. And he didn't know, he had forgotten my name because everyone tells him their name. He knows like a million people. Yeah. He's like a celebrity. And so he just pointed at me and goes, you, Wolverine, you're my partner. And I'm like, okay. And then, we just kind of hit it off from there. And he would come back and give seminars throughout the years. And I was there for about 7 years, and he came back. I think he was there 4 or 5 times. And then just from there, things kind of grew. I ended up moving to Brazil for a little while. I met him there, and we kind of built a relationship. And he moved to Texas. And so
isn't it
I've
funny?
probably known him for about 20 years.
Isn't it funny how by complete coincidence, a relationship can build and carry on for decades?
It's crazy. It really is, But, it's easy to have a relationship with somebody like Professor, you know what I mean? Like, he's very straight up. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Like, a lot of people say don't meet your idols because they're going to let you down. You know what I mean? Professor's one of the few people who's cooler in person than you hear about. You know what I mean? Like, you hear that he's cool, and then you meet him, and you're like, wow, this guy, he's definitely cool. So
I got to tell you, when we were, when we were talking to him, you know, I mean, I've never had the privilege to meet Draculino in person, you know, but I've heard of him many things throughout many different channels. And when we had him here on the show, you know, I was really surprised how easy, approachable, how funny he was. And it's just like, sometimes you envision these individuals because of the status they hold to be, you know, less approachable than they are. And in reality, they are probably, you know, just funny dudes who love jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's hilarious.
Man, I mean, he's probably the most approachable guy in jiu-jitsu. He may not look like it. He's got a really great like war face.
Yeah, it's all the time too.
If you can build the courage up to go say hello, it's always, hey, what's up, champ? And he's great. You know, he's just cool, man. You know, and I tell you what, if you find somebody out there that doesn't like Professor Draculino on any team, that's suspect. That's real suspect, because you got to do a lot of hard work to get him mad at you. I know, because I tried. And he still likes me.
Were you saying you really got to piss him off?
Like a lot. You know, I mean, he'll give you a haircut, like we say in Texas. He'll put you in your place if you need to be put there. But you know, he can forgive and forget, and that's kind of rare. You know what I mean? So he has a lot of great relationships with a lot of people, and so I'm always wary if I ever hear anybody say anything bad about him, because he's a straight up guy. He says what he means what he says. And I mean, I'm very thankful to be a part of his team and to be a close friend of his as well.
Well, good for you. I mean, that's awesome relationship definitely to have, and it just builds the kind of the layers of jiu-jitsu going beyond and off the mat and all this. But listen, before we go forward, I want to go back to that wrestling part when you were crying.
Yeah.
Okay, this is important stuff. Okay. I want to know, were you crying because your dad was trying to drag you to wrestling, or because you have gone to wrestling and the wrestling made you cry? Because you know why I'm asking this? Because Gary cries every single time I drag him on the mat. Here we go. So I want to know what the correlation here is.
It's both. I cried first because I was a baby when I was that age. And then when I got into class, town in Oklahoma. Okay, so I don't know if you know, but Oklahoma has a very strong wrestling heritage and tradition.
Yep.
And so in the schools, they're at least when I was there, they couldn't officially start wrestling until they were in junior high. But they had club teams where the kids would start when they were 3, 4, 5 years old. So I was in 8th grade, my first year doing anything. I mean, I played soccer and played baseball, but I was neither remarkably good nor remarkably tough, even for those sports. And when I got put into wrestling, these kids had already been training like little miniature pro athletes. I mean, we had kids in our team, they were in 8th grade. They were passing out, trying to make weight with sauna suits on and stuff. Like, these kids were no joke. And so when me and actually one of my brothers got put in there, we were just like fresh meat. I mean, they would literally argue with each other about who was going to train with us, because they would just murder us. And I wasn't sobbing on the mat, but there were tears.
How'd you get over it?
Just keep going. You know really what it was? I knew that my dad wasn't going to let me quit. So I figured, you know what? If I'm going to get beat up, I might as well fight back. I mean, that's pretty much how it is. And in addition to, I did make it. I made some friends pretty quickly. Some kids that they were better than me, but they were kind of the lower end of the totem pole. So they were having to fight, and they were getting beat up too. And in addition to that, my brother too. So we could always talk to each other. But I had some really good coaches too, both in junior high, and then I wrestled in high school for a bit too. And I was really lucky. I mean, I've been lucky my whole career with coaches, but my wrestling coaches really, really helped me a lot. You know what I mean? Like, they were really good with the kids. They were good with us. And they just really, they cared about the kids. You know, they cared about us, and they were hard, but they were fair, and they knew what you were going through. And so they just helped you. You know what I mean? I think one thing that I remember thinking, and I thought this many times in jiu-jitsu too when I was a beginner, is that I realized that I was getting beat up then, but in the back of my head, somewhere back there was a little voice kind of telling me it's not always going to be this way. You know, I'm not always going to be the guy losing. As long as I keep going, right? I learned too, my coaches were technical, and, you know, wrestling has a lot of different weight classes. And so I was going with kids my size, and I would see those kids beat bigger kids. So I knew that technique was real. And I think what really turned the corner for me, so my dad told me that I had to finish the year. Like, he said, look, I went to him, like every day I was going to him after I wanted to quit, and I was like crying, and he's like, eventually he goes, look, enough. I don't want to hear any more of it, right? You're going to finish the year, and then after that, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. But if you come in here again and tell me that you want to quit, you're going to have a living hell at school and here too. So cry there, not here. And so
this is interesting. So this is interesting. Is this, do you think that motivate you to actually go through this and not quit? Because a lot of people would say, well, screw this. I mean, you know, you're supposed to be supporting me here.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say, you know, like I'm glad that he did it then, but it was hard on me. But I think, I mean, my dad was a good dad. He took care of us, you know, I mean, no real complaints. And him putting me in wrestling really changed my life. And I think what happened is that, again, it was kind of a combination of a couple of things. I did make some friends. I had my brother to rely on. He was having a tough time too. But even though it was hard, we would have like, it was still kind of fun in a way. You know what I mean? And then once, and he had that conversation with me, maybe like, it wasn't too long, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into the season, he told me that. And so I just kind of accepted it. Like, look, I'm going to be here. You know, I'm definitely quitting at the end of the year, 100%. Like, so I had that in my brain, like worst case scenario, I finish the year and then I just quit and then I have fun again or whatever. And I ended up making it through the season. I won some matches. I won my first match. It was a big deal for me. But then the next season, me and my brother, for whatever reason, we decided to do it again. We're like, you know what? Wasn't so bad. Our friends are doing it. We were kind of already in a little clique. And so we went ahead and we pulled the trigger. We did it again. And at the beginning of the season, they had like a tryout period where kids who you could try different sports for like a week before you decided if you wanted to do football or baseball or wrestling or whatever. And so when it came to wrestling, our wrestling mat was like full of these brand new kids. And there was a kid at our school that was like kind of like a low level bully, sort of. He wasn't like the main bully, but he was like in there, you know,
a sidekick.
And
there are
levels
of bullies.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like the main guy, but you know, he was out there lurking around, you know, pushing people and knocking your books out of your hand and stuff. But you know, he wasn't a super bad character. But anyways, he grabbed me and like, hey, I want to train with you. And I'm like, oh man, I was scared. But you know, I'd done it for a year. I knew he hadn't, and we wrestled. And I mean, not that I beat him up, but I took him down. You know what I mean? I wrestled the match and I did okay, you know? And so that also like gave me like a lot of inspiration. Like, you know what? Something's happening. Something's changing, you know? And then from there, I just embraced it as much as I could for, you know, being 13, 14 years old. And like I said, it's kind of interesting. Like as the years went on, my dad was kind of like, are you going to keep doing this whole karate thing? And I'm like, you're the one that started this whole thing. You know, you started this whole thing. And so for years and years after I started, he was always telling me to quit. And then eventually, you know, he gave up. And you know, once I started having some notoriety and doing well and working and stuff like that, he kind of let off a bit. Now he likes it and, you know, he's proud of me and stuff. But
do you think the grind of wrestling helped you with the later transition in jiu-jitsu itself?
100%.
How long did you wrestle? So by the way, let's establish some baselines here.
So I only wrestled 3 years. I did 2 years in 8th and 9th grade, and then we moved away. And then I wrestled as a senior. When I was a senior, I was in Texas. In between that time, I was wrestling with like my friends. I kind of started to love it at that point, you know.
So at which
But
point
I did it
at which point you were introduced to jiu-jitsu?
so that was I think it was the summer after the first year of wrestling, or not the summer, but after the season. After the season, because I think there was a guy in the town. His name was James Kick It Ticket. He was like a Taekwondo, Tang Sudo teacher, and he had a little club. And so me and my brother, we did like some jiu-jitsu training with him, right? But it was for a short time. So I think actually maybe it was after the season, my second year there, and then we trained until the summer, and then we moved away. That's what it was.
Do you think so? We at some time ago we had Mike Trussell on the show, and he's well decorated wrestler, and he wrestled actually significant amount of time on a high level, and he spoke something very similar to what you were talking about, like the grind of jiu-jitsu workouts, even from very, very young age, right? From weight loss to really grinding workouts and preparations to this upcoming seasons and so on, from very early age. But at the same time, he really talked highly about that grind, really creating thicker skin, if you will. Once he transitioned to jiu-jitsu, that really helped him in the long run, in the sense of the progression in jiu-jitsu often is not so visible. It's definitely difficult to measure. Because of that wrestling background, it really made it easier for him. Would you agree with some of that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely agree with that. But I think it comes down to kind of the culture of the two sports. So a couple of things. One, when I wrestled, and this goes to, also this applies to judo too. There was never a question of if I was going to compete. That was just part of it. Mm-hmm. Like, you were going to compete. Now, whether you were doing it as varsity or JV or unattached or whatever, there was like nobody on our team didn't compete. Everybody did. It was just the lineup is what changed. Like maybe you wouldn't compete if there wasn't anybody. Like if you were third string and the other team didn't have anybody, okay, you wouldn't. But nobody really sat out unless they were injured or unless they didn't have an opponent. So that's one thing. Competition was just built into the environment. So that in itself puts pressure on you, right? It puts pressure on you because you don't want to look stupid when you get out there. You know what I mean? So when you get into the training room, I mean, everybody has I remember we had a wrestling match like at our school at like lunchtime, right? So the whole school came in during lunch, and we like wrestled like a little dual meet, like in the basketball or red mats and everything. I don't know why it was in the daytime, but they would have them in the night sometimes and then in the daytime sometimes. And, I had to get up there. Wrestling singlets are supposed to be like tight, form fitting. Like I was so skinny, it's like I had like overalls on. You know what I mean? Like it was hanging off me.
Wait a minute.
Right?
Do you have any pictures of this?
I do have pictures of this. You're not going to see them, but I have. But that puts a lot of pressure on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you lose in front of everybody, when you go back the next day, you're like, man, that sucks. So I think that's one thing that wrestling gets. And again, the judo school that I was at was very similar too. So it wasn't a question of if you were going to compete. So that alone puts pressure on you to train at least a little bit higher level. The second thing is the mentality. So how long have you been training jiu-jitsu?
20 plus years.
Okay. So I'm sure you've heard that jiu-jitsu, like strength doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. Kind of defense first, like Elio Gracie, like if you can't beat me, I win. These kind of things, right? Mm-hmm. Jiu-jitsu is about survival. Like if you come from like old school jiu-jitsu, it's kind of different now, right? People say it's all about submission, but if you trained, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, everyone's always like, it's about survival. You know what I mean? And that doesn't exist in wrestling. You know what I mean? So wrestling is like murder for 6 minutes. I don't care who you are or who your opponent is. It's like Thunderdome, 2 men enter, 1 man leave. And so that sort of mentality, that self-preservation doesn't really exist in wrestling.
Yeah. I was going to say, Mike talked about technique.
That. It's not that you got to be slick, but you got to get in there and fight.
Yeah. You don't have any time to waste. You don't have any time to lay back and wait for your opening or anything like that. You've got to go.
I had wrestling coaches that would punish kids who won matches but coasted the last round. They would have to run because they didn't push it the whole time. They won the match. You know what I mean? But because they coasted, or maybe they kind of tried to clown their opponent a little bit in the last period, the next day at school, they would have to do extra workouts because they did that. He's like, look, I don't care who you are or who they are. You got to push it the whole time. And this is like junior high school. You know what I mean? I can imagine what it's like in college.
In jiu-jitsu, some would call this a strategy. I mean, you are in a 6 or 10 minute match, depending on your rank. And if you are up by points, I mean, you turn any jiu-jitsu tournament. You'll find this right off the bat. Boom. You up by points, last 2 minutes, you're on this very thin ice between stalling and biding your time.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that one methodology is better than the other.
Right.
But and I think once you reach a certain level in jiu-jitsu, it has the same kind of mentality as wrestling. You got to grind, you got to work hard. I tell a lot of our students, that maybe brown and black belt students, like, look, if you're passing somebody's guard, you got to be prepared to attempt to pass for 8.5 minutes, 9.5 minutes. You're not going to get that pass until the last 30 seconds. You got to be mentally prepared to do that, right? When you're blue belt, purple belt, matches kind of, there's a big kind of difference in skill level a lot of times. And some people are used to kind of blowing people out of the water. And when you start hitting brown and black, that stops happening most of the time. You got to be mentally prepared to grind it out. And so if you stay in jiu-jitsu long enough and you compete at, a reasonable level, even a local level, you develop that sort of grind if you're successful. There's some people that, I don't know, they don't want to do it, which is fine. But if you commit and you want to have results, you kind of naturally arrive at a similar sort of mentality. But in my case, and I think in a lot of other people's cases, it was good to get exposed to that immediately, right off the bat. I teach the wrestling class at our school once a week, and I highly, highly recommend all of our competitors do it. If you're training jiu-jitsu 13 times a week, doing a 14th class is not really going to help you that much. But putting in a wrestling class that's something different with a different intensity, and you got to work harder because you're not as good at it, that's going to have a big impact. That's going to have a big return instead of just adding another jiu-jitsu class. So I think wrestling is beneficial to anybody.
You talk about this grinding, in various aspects of jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Do you think that because the grinding aspect is not so visible in jiu-jitsu early on, right? It's slightly different than judo particularly, or wrestling, right? Do you think that could be a trigger where a lot of people, once that grind begins, they are just not so adapted to it? They find it as a struggle?
You got to think of it like this. So jiu-jitsu, typically you pay a membership to go there. Like wrestling, you know what I mean? Like the coaches don't care. You can quit, but they're not going to get fired. You know what I mean? They're always going to have a fresh group of kids coming in. So I think that changes the dynamic as well. So I think you're right. People sign up and, they're paying $150 or $200, and, some guy in a black belt screaming at them and telling them to not to quit or whatever. And they're just trying to sweat a little bit, or maybe, I don't know, have some camaraderie with their friends. So I think that aspect, the idea that you're paying for jiu-jitsu, but most people's experience with wrestling is you sign up for it in some level of school. Again, the culture is just different. How you relate to it is different. You know what I mean?
Most definitely. Even just from cultural perspective, jiu-jitsu is very different approach if you to fighting in general, as a martial art.
Yes. But I think, look, nobody has to compete. I recommend people give it a shot, give it a try. It's good for you, particularly if you have, a lot of people say that they start jiu-jitsu for self-defense. Well, if that's true, then you need to get out and compete, because that's one step closer to self-defense. And if that's really what your goal is, then you need to step on the mat in a competition setting, because you cannot reproduce that in the room. You just can't. You know what I mean?
You're talking about the adrenaline. You're talking about the adrenaline rush and the unexpected, unpredictable situations that you might find yourself in.
Exactly. It's one step closer to a real event. So I think everyone should try competition, but everyone doesn't have the time or the wantingness to compete all the time. People have families, or people just have other interests. But I do believe that regardless of how many times you train per week, you can optimize and you can build up a good jiu-jitsu game, and you can build up mental toughness and physical toughness if you engage in the training and you pay attention to your professors and you work hard. Now you're kind of seeing a real distinction between professionals and amateurs, whereas when I first started, you first started, that line was pretty blurry, right?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. There is, first of all, professional jiu-jitsu, if we can call it that. There were some grounds for it to really be taken off the ground, and some of these guys who do this truly for living, they can actually, make money for living. Like, they can actually live off of that, which, 20 years, none of that really existed. No. 5 years ago,
there was there's a handful of guys that could teach seminars and make some money, but now, there's it's still not a huge group of people, but there's definitely significantly more people now, especially if we're talking about school owners, and it's way different. But if you just talk about just competing and teaching, you can really do that now. Once you reach a certain level, you can support yourself, right? It's hard, but you can do it.
You talked about optimizing your training a moment ago. I want to dip into that, because that's often one of the, in my opinion at least, one of the most underestimated subjects when it comes to training in general. Forget about jiu-jitsu, but just training in general, whatever it is, whether you're studying history to swimming, chess, or just jiu-jitsu itself. We have X amount of hours per day.
Yep.
Obviously our professional life, assuming that you not do jiu-jitsu for a living, but professional life takes priority, families shortly after that, or vice versa. We have to sleep at some point, and then there's, handful time available for us to do this thing that we are all, crazy about, which is jiu-jitsu, right? How do you optimize? What do you mean by optimizing your training? A lot of people struggle with that.
Well, one, this is my opinion, but I think it's valid. One, I think you have to realize that, you got to make up your mind. Do you want to actually be good, or do you want to pretend to be good? You know what I mean? There's two different things.
That's a harsh question.
I'm okay with either one of those things. If you want to pretend to be good, that's fine with me. But if you really want to be good, then you have to train in a particular way. And that way is you gotta challenge yourself, and you gotta be trying to get better every day. And a lot of times getting better every day is as simple as listening to your professors, listen to your coaches. I think that jiu-jitsu it's a science first, it's an art second, right? When you see somebody that's been doing it for 10, 20 years, it looks like an art, right? The way they move and the way they put things together. But I think you need to approach it scientifically first, and then over time, it's going to become that art. It's going to smooth out. But I think when you approach it the other way, although a select few people can do that, I think most people would benefit from doing it the other way. I think most people, particularly if you have a limited amount of time, you can't train twice a day, every day. You're training 3 times a week or 4 times a week or twice a week, whatever. I think most people would benefit from approaching it scientifically, right? You gotta kind of, start big. This is the guard. This is the mount. This is side control. And then you got to refine it over time. You know what I mean? But you got to think of it as like scientific, like boom, 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 boom. And every chance you get to practice, you have to practice. So when you get to class, I'm not saying don't have fun, but you need to be focused on what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to there's this distraction factor, as I call it. Yeah, you get to the class, bunch of friends are there. I mean, 99% of people I know, they are from Jiu Jitsu. Just over 2 decades, you kind of everybody else left, and the Jiu Jitsu guys stuck around. And I, excuse me, I know a lot of students are in a similar situations. They know they have a lot of relationships, a lot of friends on the mat. Once we see them, hey, what's up? How you doing? Blah blah blah. We start talking about things, and then we get distracted, and there's a 10 minutes pass, 20 minutes pass, and it's like, there's no
not
time
even that. Yeah, you've eaten up 2 minutes of a 5-minute round, right? Because you guys are catching up when you approach each other.
That's kind of what I meant when I was asking you, how do you optimize the training? And I feel like, I'm curious what you think about this, but I feel like really being, selfish is such a strong word, but, in a way you have to be, otherwise you are wasting time.
Depending on what level you want to get at, being selfish is a necessity.
Right.
If you want to reach a certain level, you have to be selfish. That doesn't mean to be disrespectful to people,
right?
But you have to prioritize your time and your training. This is one reason I never really, when I was really, really competing hard and training hard, I would always have not weird relationships, but like non-committal relationships, like with girls. And I could never verbalize it, like why I didn't want to commit more than I already was, right? But what I realized is over time, I realized how I could verbalize it. And it was that I needed to be selfish at that time.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to build a connection with somebody and them come to me in a moment of need. And then me say, you know what, I can't be there. I have to go train. I have to do this.
And that's hard.
I just kind of, it is hard, but I just kind of blocked people out because of that. You know what I mean? Because I knew inside that I needed to be selfish to accomplish these goals, but I didn't really know how to say it out loud, right? But I don't think you have to be like that if you're training, for fun or as a hobby. But if you want to make it to a high level, you do have to do that. You're going to have to sacrifice. Well, and I'll tell you what,
I think
people won't understand.
I think you're talking about different levels of this quote unquote selfish, right? But what I was particularly referring to, if a student comes to a class and there's a sparring session that's, let's just say 60 minutes long, and you talk to your people for 15 minutes, you just burned 2 or 3 sparring rounds.
Well,
I mean,
not even that.
Happen, right?
Not even that, but let your partners know, hey, I'm working on this, and I can't talk about anything else. Don't give me any tips about anything else. I'm working on half guard, and I have to do this, and I need this 6 minutes of your time. I need it, right? Give it. That's in a way selfish too, but it's such a great way to learn whatever you're working on. It helps you stick with it. Cause a lot of times people dabble a little bit, I'm going to play with, butterfly, or I'm going to play with, spider. And then they give up on it. Well, be selfish and tell your partners, I need this 6 minutes to only do this and not talk about anything else, not try a different technique. Don't give me any tips. Let me work on this and then go back and run through it and see what worked and what didn't. I mean, that's being selfish too, but that makes you so much better.
I can tell you this. I have started grappling with somebody while they were in the middle of talking to me because I just wanted to train. So I would just grab them and start going.
Ask
because
Gary.
they were talking and talking.
Yeah. Ask him. I do this all the time.
It's enough.
They keep talking and I just start rolling. I don't.
Well, one thing I think is important too is that, so every school is different. So some schools let you choose your training partner. Other schools assign a training partner. Like at Gracie Bar, Texas, we kind of do both. Sometimes we'll assign people. Sometimes we'll say, hey, pick a partner. And I came from a background where you were always allowed to choose your partner. Very rarely were we matched up by the instructor. So in that sort of environment, you need to take the responsibility to choose good partners. right? You can make an agreement. I mean, you can have friends say, hey, we're going to get in there, we're going to train, and then we're going to have a beer and hang out and have fun afterwards. But when we're in there, we're going to work hard. And so if you have the ability to choose your partners, you need to make those choices wisely. You know what I mean? You need to really pick people that you can put some work in with. And then you hang out afterwards. You know what I mean? You hang out afterwards. That's really where you want to have the most fun. Or during the warm-up, you're talking and hanging out. But when it comes to training, you got to get those reps in. If you break a class down that's an hour long, I mean, depending on what class it is and what school it is, you may only get 20 minutes of actual live training. The rest of it is going to be technique and warm-up. And so you need to really maximize your ability to use that time to your advantage. I'll say one other thing. People always tell me like, oh, professor, I just want to have fun. And I tell them winning is more fun than losing. So you might as well get good while you're here. You know what I mean? You're going to have more fun if you win, you know?
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-fun, but I think you can do both at the same time. I think you can have fun and get good at the same time, you know?
Well, getting good is fun. I think when you make those little,
that's what I think.
Yeah. When you make any of those little milestones or you hit any of those small goals that you've set for yourself, I think that's way more fun than BSing about anything else you could be talking about on the mat, you know?
Well, and I think fundamentally,
I think that's how you optimize. Like you were saying earlier, that's one of the best ways to optimize is to actually write some goals down. Don't just put them in your head, actually write them down. I used to have goals I would have 5-year goals. I would have 3-year goals. I would have 6-month goals. And I would also have every day of the week, morning and night, I would have techniques that I wanted to work and positions I wanted to use. And that way you can kind of track your success. Again, it kind of goes back to that art, the science before art kind of thing. You know, the more kind of trackable you make it, the easier it's going to be to see that progress and be able to like you said, to kind of enjoy those little wins. And if you stick to it, if you stay on the path, you're going to get to where you want to go.
Let me ask you about these goals and success, particularly because I personally do believe that jiu-jitsu is one of the most challenging things to track. It is very difficult to get, we can set ourselves goal. First of all, setting goal is a separate topic that is so deep that it takes hours to figure this out. Yeah. Most of people don't know how to set goals. They're unrealistic, unmeasurable, unachievable, and so on, But let's just pretend for a moment that we establish a goal, and which is, what it should be. How in the world do you measure jiu-jitsu? I mean, it is so hard. My body is different than Gary's. Gary's brain works different way than mine. And I started 2 years earlier and Gary passed me. And, I suck now. I'm ready to quit. And so it happened. I'm a blue belt. And now that's like this untold thing about blue belts quitting. So I'm right on the track, right?
Well, I think you're right. I think there's things you can track and there's things that you can't track.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
And so I think you need to focus at least partially on the things that you can track. Like one thing that I would do is I would keep track of my repetitions. So I would drill and I would have a little tick mark in my journal for every repetition that I got. And there's techniques that I have that I've done over 10,000 times and I have the little tick marks to prove it, so that's something that everyone can do. You can say, you know what, I'm going to get this many repetitions of this technique on a stagnant partner. In addition to that, I'm going to get this many minutes of training in this position with the resisting partner. Okay. Regardless of the results, right? You can make that a goal. I'm going to get this many repetitions in this amount of time. I'm going to get this much time in this position in this amount of time. So you can always do those things, right? And then I guarantee if you do that, you will see results. But you can also have, not that you should never replace jiu-jitsu with, let's say, working out, but those are trackable goals too. You can set a weight goal. You can set a athletic goal. I started doing triathlons when I was competing just because I wanted to have something kind of track. Like you said, I wanted to spend a little bit more time on my general athleticism. So you can definitely improve times in running or cycling or swimming or whatever. Again, not that you should stop doing jiu-jitsu or eliminate a class so you can run more, but that's a trackable goal, you know? In terms of competition, you can always set a goal. I'm going to do this competition on this day. Here's the result I want. And no matter what happens, you can just reevaluate that goal the next time.
I'm
You know
really
what I mean?
glad
So-
you say this because, you know, one of the things that I do in my private lessons is set some of these goals for my students. And in a very similar fashion as you were just mentioning, track the amount of times that you pass the guard per
Yep.
5-minute session. And literally write down, I went with Joe and I did X amount of, this is how many I tried, this is how many I succeeded. Now write down next one. I went with Bobby and I did this and this. And it seems very stupid. But then when you have this collective data of, you know,
It's
after
powerful.
weeks or months,
Years.
years, the patterns are starting to develop. And this is the gold. This is you start noticing, you know, oh, I was successful with this and this and this and this person, but I was not successful here. So why wasn't I successful here? Oh, maybe because he's much smaller and he's faster. So that means I have to work on my control. Maybe he's much bigger and I'm getting smashed or whatever the case is. Here's the reasoning why. And now the intelligence becomes a little, you know, you become a little smarter. You have this intelligence behind the training. And then you can start really taking action to focus on things that matter.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think it even happens. It happens sooner than that too, because if you hold yourself accountable when you have that book, even though it's your book and you're the one that's writing in it, you hold yourself accountable in the moment when you start. Right? This is my objective. This is what I want
It's
to
like
get
that
done.
telltale heart. You can hear it beating under the floor.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
You can hear
You
that
know it's there.
beating.
And
Sure.
if you come to a private later and he asks you where your notebook is and you don't have it, he knows you're full of shit, right? So I mean, it holds you accountable not only to yourself but to the people you're working with as well.
You know, on that topic, I had a student a couple of years ago who had a really busy career, and he loved jiu-jitsu, but it was so difficult for him to get into the academy because of his unflexible schedule and so on, whatever the reasoning was. The point is we came up with this thing that where we asked, how many times do you need to attend? You know, do you want to attend? And we established a goal of, you know, twice a week for the next 3 months. And it's like, how are we going to track this? So, well, you're going to write down every single time. You're going to take your notebook and you're going to put a little dash and the blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he did not want to do it. And then after 3 months, he was like, man, I'm here every single week, twice a week. And matter of fact, I start coming 3 and 4 times just to prove this whole system wrong. And I was like, yep.
Yeah, it works.
So
Well, I'll tell you what. I have a similar story. I've told this many times. I think this is one of the best stories ever. I think, in my opinion, in terms of how do you use your time wisely. If you talk to anybody that knows me in jiu-jitsu, I'm kind of notorious for not really caring about your excuses. I don't really tell somebody else. I don't care.
Gary, are
know
you
what I
listening
mean?
to this?
Yeah, I
And,
won't bother him with
but-
my excuses.
But I did. There was one excuse that I accepted, and I was happy to accept it.
Okay.
We had a student. This is quite a long time ago, and I think they were a blue belt at the time, and they would train twice a week, Tuesday, Thursday, always. Tuesday, Thursday, always. They would compete. They would do really well. Like, they didn't always win, but they were always giving people a hard time. He would medal. He would get silver. He would get bronze. He would get gold sometimes. And we were always pushing him, man, if you just train more, you will always get the gold. You're going to be really good. Like, just, you got to train more. And he's like, I don't want to. And eventually we kind of cornered and pinned him down. Like, hey man, like, what's going on? You know, like, we want you to train more. You're doing really good. You're a part of the team. You're really kicking ass. And he goes, look, man, he goes, I love jiu-jitsu. I love training here. I love being here during my time, but I have a family. I have other hobbies, you know, this kind of stuff. And we're like, man, well, you're like, it's like almost like you're wasting your time coming in here twice a week. What's your goal? I said to him. And he goes, my goal is to be the best person in the world who only trains twice a week.
Boom.
And I was like,
All right.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. That's a pretty great answer, I think. You know what I mean? Because he didn't say, my goal was to be as good as I can be training twice a week. You know what I mean? He didn't say my goal is to be better than I was the day before. He said my goal is to be the best person in the world who only trains twice a week. And I think that's pretty strong, you know? So regardless of the amount of time that you have, you can, and he had fun when he trained too. He was one of the guys, he always had fun. He was always laughing, but he trained hard. You know what I mean? So you can get good and train hard with whatever time you have, you know?
Yeah, I think that what's important here is really the optimizing that training, being smart about it, you know, and really using the time. And I want to stress this because there will be, you know, thousands of people listening to this, and it's a lot
Hopefully.
of people will be, you know, sometimes, hopefully. Well,
I got my fingers crossed.
We'll
Fingers
kick
crossed.
Gary out, and then we're gonna double on listeners. But
I'll go. Whatever makes you happy.
But I think what's important is that, again, going back to this topic of we have limited time. Every single day, every single week. There are other things that are more important than jiu-jitsu. I can't stress that enough. They should be.
Whoa, slow down.
Yeah, Thomas is BSing you right now.
No,
Let's
not in
get
his
too
life.
crazy here. Let's not get too crazy.
Well, I'm just saying, okay? If they don't go to work, they don't have money to pay tuition, and then, well, I'm just kidding. But listen, the point is there are things that are more important than jiu-jitsu. Even though we are very passionate about it, but maximizing the time that we're putting in, whether it's twice a week or 6 times a week, it doesn't matter. Maximizing the time, it's critical to your success. Because if you're burning the time and you're wasting it, well, why do it? I guess I don't know. That's
and
well, I think one thing you have to do is like, so we have a big school, and we have people training at all different levels. We have people that fought in the UFC. We have people that are world champions in jiu-jitsu at black belts. We have champions through all different levels. And then we have just regular people too, just regular people coming in and training. All of those people train together. And I think our gym does a pretty good job of having those people mingle together. But one of the conversations I have with people a lot of the time is that people kind of get obsessed with belts sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They get obsessed with this belt and that belt. And I don't want to give people, if you're listening out there, kids, I'm not giving you an excuse to use to make yourself feel better for not training, but people need to think more about when you train with somebody and you really want to know how good they are, don't look at the belt. Ask them how long they've been training. You know what I mean? Like, how long you've been training? How many days a week do you train? You know, because sometimes if you're training twice a week, right, and somebody comes in and they're training twice a day, every day, and they've been doing that for 4 or 5 years, I mean, you really can't keep up. And that's not your fault, and it's not bad, and it doesn't mean you're not tough. So you got to be realistic with what you're doing. You know, we've had people come in and they really want to win, you know, tournaments, and they work hard. They just don't have the time that other people have. And we got to tell them, like, look, I mean, you're doing great. You got to be realistic with your goals. You know, I'm not trying to not let people achieve their highest level, but if you're dealing with a limited amount of time, you really have to set your goals accordingly. You know, you really, really, really do. And so I think instead of, you know, if you're a blue belt, let's say you're a purple belt and you come in, you drop into a lunch class you've never been to, and a blue belt just mops the floor with you. Well, what you don't know is that blue belt's probably been training. Maybe he came from the kids class, right? So he's been training 10 years, even though we've all seen this guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's only a blue belt, but he's been training for 10 years.
Shout out to Lorenzo.
I mean, yeah, you can cut yourself some slack. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying don't put any pressure on yourself and don't try, but you know, you just got to realize what you're working with, and you got to be realistic. And you do have to be fun. You do have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy the grind, whether it's good or bad. You know.
Well, would you agree with this, with the recipe of the statement, more you put into it, more you get out of it?
100%.
I mean, it's
100%.
Sometimes it's as simple as this, right? And again, you actually nailed something really important. It is not your fault. And this is the important, because sometimes we get, you know, kind of in this vortex of this never-ending thoughts of, well, how come I started 2 years earlier than him, and he's tapping me out left and right. And that's very unfair statement or comparison, in my opinion. Really, what should be asked, why this is happening. And often the answer is, well, I'm 55 and he's 25. That could be a factor.
Yeah. Comparison is the enemy of happiness.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Hands down.
Like,
absolutely.
And I'll give you an example. I was training with Professor, I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less. And we were training super hard, and like we got into I don't even remember what the position was. We got into a position where I felt like really good and everything was lining up. I'm like, man, this is it. This is the time. I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And then before I know it, he had gotten behind me, choked me. And I just got up and I said, what did I do wrong? Like, what happened? And he was kind of tying his belt, and he said, 25 years, man. And I said, what? He goes, I've been doing this 25 years. He goes, look, you didn't do anything wrong. You were doing it all right. I don't know. There was nothing you did wrong. You know what I mean? I just have the experience. Yeah. And he wasn't saying that in any sort of harsh way. He was just being honest. He's like, man, you were doing great. Keep going. But I don't know. I can't even explain what I did. I just knew what to do and I did it. And it wasn't even a mistake on your part. So you have to account for a little bit of that sometimes. You know, you go up against some of these guys that are so experienced, you know, that I don't want to give people a chance to not put any pressure on themselves or not work hard, but you got to cut yourself slack a little bit sometimes.
But also these moments like what you talk about right here, it could be really rewarding and fruitful moments where we really acknowledge this. Like, listen, this guy has 25 years of experience, and I was able to manage this in such a way that I saw the opportunity. And that's fine. It didn't go my way. Let's try it one more time. What if I reset this? This is a moment where we can really evaluate the situation and make changes to get better versus looking at it. All right, this is my first month and I didn't tap up a black belt. Well,
yeah.
Well, you got to put things in perspective.
You really have to find the silver lining in every day that you train, because you're going to have bad days.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I mean by, and talking about like putting things in perspective, take age into account, take prior experience into account. You don't know that this dude who's 12 years younger than you wrestled in college. You're going to have a really hard time no matter how much jiu-jitsu you know. So don't be discouraged when those, think about those things as much as you think about everything else on the mat. And that'll help you put things into perspective where you'll walk away, a little disappointed, but you're not going to walk away discouraged, and you'll be back, the next round or the next day, what have you. Just to make sure that, you can keep going on that path, that you don't get those blue belt blues and pull out and quit. I think it's important just to take everything into consideration, I guess, to help you along the way.
Well, I'll say this too, as a bit of, we were kind of being a little negative about people training, just as a hobby. But I'll tell you what, people that train 2-3 times a week, they have one advantage over people who are training every single day, twice a day. That's like motivation and excitement, right? When you only train twice a week or 3 times a week, you are excited to come to class. Like, you are off the level, off the charts excited. You're ready to go. You're rested. You've been eating. You've been doing your cryotherapy, all this stuff to get ready for those 2 or 3 days that you train. And somebody who is training every day, twice a day, whatever, obviously they're motivated to push through that. But I guarantee you, those people are kind of just in like a medium grind zone, right? They don't have that same, they're pumped for the tournament. They're thinking about peaking for the tournament, right? And I'm not saying if you're a hobby guy, you should go in there and try to make training the tournament. But I can tell you, I have seen some of the world's best people have some incredibly tough matches with people that just train as a hobby, because those hobby guys, they took it serious, they were motivated, they paid attention, and they never gave up. You know what I mean? So don't try to say I'm knocking all these hobby people out there. you can really work some magic if you put your mind to it. And again, you have that motivation. There's proof of this at the Masters Worlds every single year. When you see people you've never heard of beat previous adult level world champions. That happens. And it's about motivation. If you get your black belt when you're 30 instead of when you're 21, you're still hyped and ready to go. If you've already won the black belts in the adult division, is winning the Masters really that big of a deal? So it's not that you want to lose or you don't want to win, but there is a difference in motivation there. And we have a lot of older students, and I tell people, like, look, your motivation is going up, theirs is going down, right? You are rearranging your life for jiu-jitsu. They are trying to, in some ways, unentangle and have a normal life. So you can make big upsets because of that. So there's light at the end of the tunnel for anybody training that wants to make big things happen, but they can't do this full time. You can still make big things happen. I've seen it.
Actually, one of my good friends, Andres, and a shout out to Andres. He's a black belt. He's been on the mat for a very long time. But I'll tell you, he's an attorney. He's a lawyer, and I don't know, but like, he doesn't have time. That this is not his career, but he loves jiu-jitsu, so passionate about it. And the entire time, from the white belt all the way up to this time, he trains twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. He comes in, he trains at his academy, he grinds it, and the whole thing, and the entire time, he developed this reputation now that you can't, no matter what you do, you can do a lot of things, but no matter what you do, you will never pass his guard. Like, it's impossible to pass his guard. And when you talk to him about it, he's very simple about it. He was like, listen, the entire time I got nothing. I'm here twice a week. I cannot be here twice a day.
Yep.
I'm focusing on simple things. You will not pass my guard. That's it. Like that's what I do. And he will sweep you in directions that you didn't even know existed. But it's such a inspiring story of a professional attorney who loves jiu-jitsu and was able to achieve the level of black belt, even though that's not his career, and I think that opportunity exists for everybody as long as we structure this, so we can continue growing. And I think that's the big message behind our conversation today is, optimizing the training and continue growing where we are learning new things, we are getting better. And you mentioned something important, not comparing ourselves to other people, but really looking inside and seeing how we are improving the process. Gary, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's, excuse me, not starting until I was in my late 40s. I got checked right away. Like, oh, holy shit, I didn't realize how old I am.
You think you were crying at the wrestling?
Yeah.
This guy right here.
Man. Growing up, I did martial arts over the years, different things. But I was never very athletic. And I came in here at 46 and I was like, whoa, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And then, like I said earlier, you run up against that dude who's 12 years younger than you that wrestled in college. You've got to put these things in perspective. Otherwise, you're going to leave. You're going to be so discouraged. I'm not who I used to be, or I'm not who I thought I was. Put that shit aside and look at who you really are. All right. I'm close to 50. I was never very athletic. And like you guys were saying, is what can I take away from it today to be a little bit better? What can I learn? What can I work on and be consistent in my short goals, my little goals that'll get more fulfilling as time goes on. You cannot compare yourself to other people. You get trapped in that. I think you're going to quit. I don't think that's a motivating factor for people, is comparing themselves to others. It might be in the short term, but I think you're going to get schooled somewhere along the lines and it's going to be a discouraging thing for you. So I just say, don't do it.
No, I think you need to, I don't want to get too cliche, and I kind of referenced it earlier about, just being better today than you were yesterday. But all joking aside, that is a pretty good way to look at things, especially if you're at the very bottom. You know what I mean? Like, you got to realize that, like, the road to success it's a staircase. It's not an escalator. You know what I mean? And so you have to be, one of the biggest changes, or one of the things that helped me the most when I kind of decided to make the shift from like just kind of playing around to giving it my all, was I literally wrote down that I was ready for the hard work, and I had a strategy for when things went bad, went sour. So when those hard times came, it wasn't so crushing as it was maybe if I hadn't prepared for it. So I think, one, you need to prepare yourself to win. You need to allow yourself to win. A lot of people don't do that. It took me a long time to prepare myself to win, but you got to prepare yourself to lose particularly in training. You know what I mean? Like if I made a reference to, do you want to really be good or do you want to pretend to be good? If you want to really be good, you got to take chances on the mat. You can't compare yourself to other people, as y'all said. And you also can't listen to people on and off the mat, because, you know, if you're out there working on your weak side guard passing and somebody catches you in a triangle that really never catches you, believe me, you are going to hear them talking about it. They shouldn't do that. And normally what happens on the mat stays on the mat, but we all know that people are going to talk. And so if you really want to get good at any level, you know, regardless of how much you're training, you got to put yourself out there, and you got to be ready to lose if you want to get better. Right.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Do you want to pretend to be good, or do you really want to be good? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're really referring to today, we're not talking about somebody being a world champion. We're talking about somebody being really good at this thing, whatever that thing is, whether it's a guard.
Just really learning jiu-jitsu.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely. Because there would be a lot of people listening that's like, oh, yeah, this guy said that either I'm a world champion or I'm pretending. No. That's not what we're talking about.
No. Definitely not. I think that applies to everybody. You know what I mean? I think it applies to,
silence.
I think that it's a shame, you know, like I two things. One, I'm surprised every day on the mat by people in terms of what they're capable of. You know what I mean? You've been training a long time, and so I'm sure that you've seen people who you just thought weren't going to get it. And then you turn around one day and they got it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of positivity there if you just stick with it, you know? And again, I'm not, all the things that I'm talking about are for everybody. I think that they'll help everybody. I trained for a long time without really trying to be the best or whatever. And all of these things help me just to stay on the mat and get better and have fun and improve, you know?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, surprises like this are one of the most rewarding things for me as an instructor. Like, people come into the academy and, you know, I'm not a judgmental person by no means, but, you know, over time, over 20 years, you see people, you see personalities, and you kind of see, you know, oh, this guy is good. Like, there's a future there.
Yeah.
You know, I really hope he sticks around. And then on the flip side, you do see people who's like, all right, this is going to be harder. You know, they are very timid. We need to engage and so on. And sometimes, you know, you think to yourselves like, well, will they stick around? You know, how is this? How can I help them? And the moment that they surprise you, the moment they surprise me at least, they're like, damn, I didn't see this coming.
Great.
This is gold right there. That is why I love my job. And
like, I mean, yeah, as a professor, like, you're happy to see any of your students succeed, but there is something more satisfying about seeing somebody who came in with no coordination, no athleticism, and then, you know, 5 years down the road, you see them submitting some amateur MMA fighter that came in with a big talk from another school. You're like, yeah, it's nice, right? Oh yeah. And like, I mean, it's not about beating people up on the mat, but it's great to see people make that transformation.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I believe 100% it's possible for everybody if you just keep going. Just keep going.
This is why all the professors have a back office, because they go into the office and it's like, yeah, this is happening.
They're high-fiving each other.
Yeah. I think what you just said, though, keep showing up. That's all. You know, people ask all the time. I haven't been doing this that long, but people will ask me my advice. My advice is just keep coming. Just keep coming. You'll figure it out. And I'm not even talking about like jiu-jitsu, figuring out jiu-jitsu. You're going to figure out for yourself, you know, just keep coming. and it'll happen for you.
I keep saying this, but this is like one of the things I say all the time. I was simply too stupid to quit. Like it just, I just stuck around with this no matter what the obstacles were. And, I really wish that more people stuck around with it, but that's part of the dynamic, right? It's part of all of this. Listen, we've been this for a while now. Man, I'm looking at time. Before we wrap this up, we have this thing that we do at the end of every episode. We didn't tell you this, is a little surprise, but Gary has 5 questions. Gary has 5 questions, kind of rapid questions. Some of them are funny, some of them are a little more serious. But first thing that comes to your mind, it always generates interesting end to the conversation, and it sometimes even spin up a couple interesting stories.
Yeah, so we know what it was like when you first stepped on the wrestling mats. You weren't too happy about it, but what was it like the first time you stepped on the jiu-jitsu mat in a real class, a real setting?
This is embarrassing. I was about 50% sure I was going to submit the instructor.
Oh, nice. You're one of those guys.
Ridiculous I was.
Yeah.
Because I had 3 years of wrestling and a couple of years of judo. I'm like, man, I'm probably going to. I was thinking in my head, like, what am I going to say to the guy after I submit him in front of everybody and I just walked in off the street? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
how'd that go for you?
Didn't work out. Didn't work out.
No.
You know what's funny about this? And I said this already on the previous episodes, but I had a similar incident. First time on the mat.
Oh, tell them who your first time on the mat was.
I'm getting paired up with Miguel Torres. And Miguel Torres is getting getting ready for his professional fight. And Miguel was like 130 pounds, at top of his shape. And I was well over 200 at that time. That's my first class. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to smash this guy. Well, was I wrong?
Yeah, you know what? He doesn't get a lot of respect, I don't think, man. He did a lot of great things in MMA. And he was like really good jiu-jitsu too. I think he got a bronze in the worlds as well in the gi.
We had him on the show. I'm not saying this because I know Miguel personally, but I do think he's one of the most unappreciated personalities
100%.
or individuals.
I agree.
In MMA and in Jiu-Jitsu. His generation was the one that established what we watch today at UFC. That's how I look at it.
Well,
and
he was really big in not King of the Cage. What was the
WEC?
WC. He was in there with all those guys.
Yep. He was their champ.
I think for whatever reason, he just kind of, I don't know, but he was doing a lot of that fighting that made that organization famous and made a lot of people famous coming out of there. And I agree 100%. Like, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, man. He was a great representative for jiu-jitsu. He had really good jiu-jitsu. And he was a good fighter in general, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He still has a academy nearby here in Indiana, and he's doing well, and continue doing what he loves. But yeah, no, I did think that I'm going to destroy him on my first day.
I'll tell you one more thing. I have footage that I might release at some point. I was the school that I started off at. They would give like intermediate ranks in between white and blue. So I was like an orange belt. Draculino came and was giving a seminar, and there's footage of us rolling. And you can see me in line, like getting hyped up, like I'm about to wreck this guy. You can see it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when it's my turn to go, it's like a tornado that lasts about 32 seconds, and then, then it's over. You know what I mean? But I kind of want to release it.
So what we should do is get Draculino and you on the show, have him watch this, and then comment.
Yeah.
We can't be in the same room. He's got to be somewhere. I don't want to be in the same room in case he gets mad at me.
I don't think that's going to happen. Number 2 is, what has been your most rewarding achievement?
And that's often on and off the mat.
Either or.
That's hard. Well, you know what? I'll keep it jiu-jitsu related. I think probably something that made a big impact. I won the European Championships in like 2013, and I really needed it at that time. I had some losses before that, and it was just it had a very, very big impact on me to kind of solidify some things that I needed to know at that time. And I had a big match in the final, and I had this whole vacation planned afterwards. And if I'd have screwed that up, I'd have ruined this whole vacation. But it just made that was probably one of my favorite wins, I think. And I think it had one of the biggest impacts on me. It's just I was in a little bit of a rough place in terms of like mentally where I was at competing. And I think that really helped to get me back on track for a little while. And it just, I don't know. I kind of, something else too that made a big impact on me is Professor always told me we would review matches when I would have a match, I would come back and we would review it. And he would always say, man, you got to make it happen. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what technique are you talking about? Or what did I do wrong? He goes, that's not what I'm talking about. You just have to make it happen. And I had a very hard time understanding what he meant by that, because I was always so like technique oriented and like detail oriented. And so he was always trying to tell me like, you just got to make it happen. And I remember very, very specifically, I was getting warmed up for the final in that tournament. And all I could think in my head was what he told me about making it happen. And this is one of the few times I went out there without a real plan. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to make it happen. I'm not going to make a prediction on how it's going to end. I'm just going to make it happen. And I ended up using a technique that I had never used in competition to get a submission. And it really solidified some things that I needed to know at that time in terms of jiu-jitsu and what I was capable of. And so I think that's probably one of my favorite times.
Good for you.
Oh, those are
awesome.
great answers.
Great
absolutely. All right. Have you ever wanted to quit?
For temporarily, maybe. I never wanted to quit altogether. But there's been days where I thought about not coming back. But I think that's one of I have a couple of superpowers. One, I don't get jet lag. Two, I don't cramp. I don't know why. Never in my life have I got like a Charlie horse or whatever. I don't get jet lag when I travel. And the third one is I might lose a lot of battles, but I win the war. You know what I mean? There's many times that I've quit in training, but I always came back the next day. So the answer is yes and no. I never wanted to quit altogether, but there were some days where I definitely wanted to leave early. I'll say that.
All right.
Fair enough.
Describe your feelings when you got your black belt.
This is kind of funny. So I got my black belt with 4 other guys. And before the ceremony, somebody had mentioned that like sometimes people cry when they get their black belt. And I was like, I was 26, I think, when I got it. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why would you cry? This is so dumb, you know? And then I was the last person to get my black belt. So the first guy got teary-eyed. He wasn't like sobbing, but he was it was getting out of control, and he sucked it back and he made the short speech and then he went on. The next guy like cried, thanked his wife. The next guy, you know, single tear goes on his cheek, this kind of thing. And then I get up there and I'm like, initially I'm like super excited or whatever. And then I start talking and I hear that voice crack and I start getting these emotions, you know? And so I cut it short right there. And because it was coming, you know, it's just like, man, you don't realize how much work you put in and how much time you put in. And when somebody puts the black belt around your waist, doesn't matter who it is or you know how long it took you. When that all comes into being, you know, it is emotional. So it was emotional at the time, and everybody thinks they're not going to cry, but man, those feelings are going to come.
So what I'm learning today is everybody cries when they get a black belt, and everybody cries when they start a wrestling match.
I do. Yeah, for sure.
All right, and last question is: do you wash your belt?
I don't. No wash.
No wash. That's it. That's it.
All right. How come?
I don't know. I mean, I just never did. I don't know. It's like well, I won't say that, but I don't know. I just don't. I just don't. I probably should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I just don't.
All right, then.
Fair enough.
Good stuff.
Listen, a great conversation. Amazing details and amazing thoughts on particularly on the optimization of training and how to train smart. And I really appreciate you sharing all the wisdom that you have compiled over decades of being on the mat. If anybody wants to connect with you, where can they find you? Are you available online, social media, websites, anywhere?
Yeah, you can. So you can find me on Facebook just under my name, Brandon Mullins. I also have a small company called justgipants.com where we sell replacement gi pants and the stretchy rope and stuff. And so I have Instagram. That's the only way I'm on Instagram is through justgipants.com, all one word. And so I'm posting up spicy jiu-jitsu memes on there as well, and interesting pictures from around the world and stuff. So that's probably the best way to contact me, either through my personal Facebook at Brandon Mullins or through Instagram at justgipants.com. Yeah, that's probably the best way.
Great. Good
Awesome.
stuff.
Well, we'll make sure we include all the links in the details or on the description of the episode. And if everybody wants to connect with you, obviously that's the best way to do it. Thanks for being here. Let's wrap this up today. And if you're ever in Chicago, I always say this, but if you're ever in Chicago area, please make sure you stay connected. I would love to have you in my academy. Come in and visit and see and meet with us in person.
Cool.
100%. I've been to Chicago, so I might show up.
Oh, do it, man. It's a good time. It's a good time.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap this up for today. Have a good one.
Thanks, man. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.